Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis and tackle the things in the world of football and/or soccer that we thought were interesting. Nailed it. I'm Tom Rennie. Alongside me for today's program is MLS legend, voyeur of all US soccer, and indeed top broadcaster. It is Brian Dunny Dunseth. Hello, old chum. How are you?
I'm good. I just think I wiped my mouth and I think a hair from my wife popped out.
Ooh.
Like one of her long,
Ooh.
and I'm like, did she was wearing my anyway, got really weird and awkward there for a second. I'm great. How are you, man? We were in Seattle at the weekend. I was with Max Bretos, Tio Max. I'm heading off to LAFC Austin on Wednesday morning and then back here for a Real Salt Lake game at the weekend. So got a fun little jam-packed MLS-centric week and excited to be talking some Premier League football with you, my friend.
I had a lovely weekend. It was really good, actually.
You were great, by the way.
Do you know,
great.
when you know you did a good job?
Yeah.
And I feel like Villa-Everton was such a great game, and I was so into it, and I enjoyed it so much. But I also, when playing the commentary back, thought, that was good. Nailed
The
that.
John Duran goal, you smashed it.
Really happy with that. So that made me really happy. I felt buoyant on Saturday night. Plus, of course, we had Danny Ings scoring a late equaliser for West Ham with his new Ricky Gervais wig. So that was pretty cool.
Daniel Ings? Why did they keep saying Daniel Ings?
Daniel William John Ings. I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing they're going to push, but he's never going to score again. So I wouldn't remember it too much. And then I had a great day on Sunday. I went to the North London Derby, which is always just excellent. The game itself wasn't as good as last year in terms of narrative or anything, but it's always great, always a great atmosphere. And I then had a couple of drinks with one of Ray Hudson's former partners,
right?
The lovely Sonia, who was just so nice. Just one of the nicest people I've ever met. It was so cool. And we were in the goal line bar underneath the South Stand, like the big stand where they attack in the second half, having a couple of drinks with one of Ray Hudson's former partners. And it was all very complimentary about Ray, but I did get some stories about Ray, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say them on the show. Probably not. But I mean, he comes out well in them, but as you can imagine, he also comes out fucking nuts. Sorry, Tim. But she was lovely, very nice. And she also bought my kids some things as a gift, which is very nice. Though she didn't give me them at Tottenham because the bag check is very stringent. So I got a call today from my TalkSport office saying, someone has left a bag in reception for you. We're concerned about this. Could you please verify that this is someone you know?
Yes.
So either
it's
a bomb threat. Yeah. Could be a bomb threat. Could be a shirt. I don't know. We'll find out in future, but it was great. Look, a few things to talk about today. I do want to talk about the North London Derby because it was really interesting, both from the Arsenal perspective and the Postecoglou perspective. Not going great for him. Liverpool losing to Nottingham Forest is hilarious. King of the Balds no longer, Arnie Slot. I think when a bald man beats a bald man, the bald man winner becomes the new king of the balds. So Nuno Holy Spirit is now king of the balds. We'll do a bit of that. Lionel Messi is back. Plus, we got some heroes and villains for you as well. Let's start with the North London Derby. And I wanted to get your view on a theory. Arsenal, right, in this Arteta era, they have had some brilliant attacking performances. They have had some great patterns of play stuff. They have beguiled us and we've enjoyed them at times. But then it hasn't won them anything. And when Mikel Arteta first came to Arsenal, I had this theory. Maybe it was because David Moyes is, of course, a life obsession of mine. But I always thought, actually, he's not taken all that from Pep Guardiola. He's not a tick-a-tacker sort of manager. He's a lot more David Moyes, caution first, score from a corner, shut the game down. And that's what the early days of Arteta sort of felt like. The football's got better, the players have got better. But watching the game at the weekend, I kept thinking about the Everton link, kept thinking about Arteta's coaching development, playing development. And I was watching the game next to a Chelsea fan. And after the game, I was like, what do you think? Like, what did you make of Arsenal? He doesn't see him in the flesh very much. And he said, that was basically every Jose Mourinho game I watched for Chelsea between 2004 and 2006. And I thought it was a really fascinating observation. They had like 30% possession, didn't create many chances, never really looked like conceding. Maybe that's because Brennan Johnson couldn't knock snow off a rope. I don't know. But, there was never really a moment where you were like, oh, Ray has really been called into amazing action here. You've got Gabriel and Saliba doing their sort of Carvalho and Terry thing. You had
Yeah.
a great performance from Jorginho, where he looked fantastic in midfield. There was a central striker, Drogba-esque, but he was coming back and sort of getting involved. Kai Havertz, it's not a perfect comparison, but it did, Dunny, get me thinking, yeah, it is a lot more Mourinho than it is Guardiola. And I wonder what you thought about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory. Because when I think about Arteta now, it's an evolution of a group where it feels as though he's adding in wrinkles to the game. And in moments, or I guess against opponents in certain matches, he knows that just flat out, player for player, name on the back of the jersey, that performance is going to be greater than what the opponent is capable of doing. But in certain games, I think he adjusts because he's looking for strengths and weaknesses, right? As he does in every single game. But in a game like this, I think Tottenham, they looked more vulnerable defensively with the ball. And by that, I mean trying to introduce both outside backs higher into the attacking phase of play led Arsenal into a very simple tactic, which was, and it's interesting because the idea of like being a counter-attacking team, they're more than just a counter-attacking team. But I think in certain matches, they have proven that they're very capable of playing as direct as possible based on the positioning, specifically of outside backs and central midfielders, and trying to spread the two center backs around, get Mickey out wide, even though one of the fastest players in the Premier League, get Romero out wide, where he's a little bit more uncomfortable, but he's gonna blade the living hell out of anyone who comes near him, and see if they can overload some of the channel work. Um, at the end of the day, I think it was a very clear indicator of where these two teams are, meaning that even without a couple of really important pieces, that Arsenal's evolution of their roster is strong enough, and the mentality has grown into kind of this idea that the system is greater than the individual parts. And the flip side for Big Ange Postecoglou is that style without substance is still going to be an issue against certain teams. So at the end of the day, I thought it was a fair result. I think more than anything, Big Ange Postecoglou being a little more agitated in the post game press conference, where the female reporter is trying to finish asking the question, and he snaps at her and says something to the effect of, "Yeah, are you going to let me finish? Are you going to let me answer?" And then following it up with, it's saying that historically, not that I I but he termed it differently, his answer. It was something to the effect of,
He
it's
always
not,
wins in his second year, that sort of
yeah,
thing.
but the first, it was more of like, historically, it was like,
Right.
he doubled down. He's like, no, I always win in my second year. It's not like a theory, it's a fact. And that's a bold statement because he's trying to do effectively. We're seeing season 2 of Big Ange Postecoglou doing with Tottenham what Mikel Arteta has had 5 years to do. So, there's a little bit of a pendulum balance that we have to take into account. And I don't think anybody would suggest that Tottenham, in terms of depth, roster depth and quality, is anywhere close to what Arsenal has currently. Certainly nowhere close to what Arsenal has built in the last 3 years in terms of consistency of performance, even though they've fallen short to the juggernaut that is Pep Guardiola and Man City. But I do agree with you. It's more about the fine details of possession as opposed to possession to move players around. He still wants to do that. I think he still is highly influenced by Pep, but
Mm.
he's not Pep light. He's Mikel
No.
Arteta, and I think he's earned the right to stand alone.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to look at it. I don't think I think that's a really good point. He isn't trying to be Guardiola, and I think that comparison is just not worth the time of day that we've been giving it, because I think it's evident. I think it's really interesting with Arteta. He seems to have realized, I can't win this way. I can't win this way. And the fact they scored 91 goals last season or whatever, and we keep having this conversation about the central striker, which is why it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I think he would rather, as it seems basic this, but let's score 75 goals and be champions rather than 91 goals and be expansive and everyone loves us. He doesn't want to be everyone's favorite second team. He doesn't want to be the Newcastle Entertainers of 1996 that should have won the league but didn't. We remember them, but no one's got the trophies to back up the qualities they had. And I thought this win, the Aston Villa win, I did the commentary of that one a couple of weeks ago. It's really interesting. They are not interested in any way about anything other than winning this game. And that's margin calls, that's caution, and it's scoring corners. I mean, I
Yeah.
love scoring corners. It's so important to score corners. And there's a great video doing the rounds. I don't necessarily like these things, but this one was funny. There's a pair of Tottenham brothers who filmed themselves at the game. And again, I know, but it was interesting. There's part of it where they, at the corner, are filming themselves and they both turn away. It's all for show, of course, but they're like, we're going to concede this because Tottenham are diabolical at defending corners. And I think it's like 25 or 26 of the last 55 goals conceded, something like that, have been corners. I've got it in my notes here and I'll find the stat. It's 16 goals conceded from set pieces in the last 54, which is just like an insane amount of like cross-head goal. But for Arsenal on the other end of the spectrum, the most goals from corners of any team across last season and the start of this, it's just so important, Dunny. And yet it still seems an undervalued skill in the game, an undervalued thing that certainly Ange Postecoglou, who always wins in his second season, hasn't quite cottoned onto yet, which is just, I don't really get that.
Well, it's interesting. I think the teams that I had success with scoring goals off corners and set pieces, there was a mentality. And I was saying this last week and it was interesting. We were having the conversation with Kyle Martino and DeMarcus Beasley for our coverage for the US men's national team on TNT and Turner. It's like we kept using the word like there's a dog, like your dog, like you got to have that dog in you. And we were referencing certain players, Alexi Lalas and Marcelo Balboa and Eddie Pope and guys like John Harkes and Eric Winalda. Certainly like an Oguchi Onyewu, a Michael Bradley, a Jermaine Jones specifically, a Clint Dempsey, absolutely. Even a Landon, like an elite competitor, but doesn't really have like, he's more of a internal personality as opposed to an expressive personality. Clint Dempsey's probably the guy that when you say like as an American national team player who's got that dog in him, it was always Deuce. Deuce had that dog in him. But it was funny. You have to have a collective group of mentality guys, like guys that are like, nah, man, you, bro. Like, sorry, Tim. You got to be like, I remember we'd put up set pieces and you'd have like the individual marking, like, okay, here's going to be the starters. Who wants the guys on corners, blah, blah, blah. This is what, you've already gone. And I always wanted the big guy. Like I wanted the best guy. I thought it was like a great challenge. So I wanted to like I wanted to battle. Like I want to wrap up. I want to use the thumbs. I want to get in the ribs. I want to Dunsethery this guy. And when you had a group of guys like that, that's when I think statistically, defensively, you were great, didn't concede a lot of goals. Offensively, you generated a lot of really dangerous moments. And that's the only way I can really explain it is that you have to have a collective, like elite, like you mentality, guys. Sorry, Tim. Like if you don't have that group, that's when I think, it's like when they say, well, it's a lot easier to teach people how to defend than it is to score goals. It's a lot easier to teach guys and teams how to score goals off corners and set pieces if they got that mentality. Like, no, like, and you wrap up, I'm gonna hit your arms down. Like
Romero, I mean, on the Spurs
Romero's
perspective, Romero's got it, but why?
Absolutely.
But he's been there for 2 years and they still can't defend a
well,
set
it's not
piece.
only
So
him.
it's got to be more than the dog, right?
No, you got to have a bunch of dogs. You can't just have one. It's got to be a group. You got to have a pound. Like it's got to be everybody. You got to have that mentality. When you have that mentality, it's different. It absolutely is different.
Listen, a couple more on this, and I want to move us on. But the Postecoglou thing, going back to what you referenced earlier on, it's a pet peeve of mine because I've done this, and I know you've done it as well. The kind of post-match, the pre-match. It's a tough situation, a tough scenario, especially when you're doing kind of Premier League. I mentioned years ago, like when I used to do Andre Villas-Boas all the time. He was always reasonably like curt, professional, but curt, and I found it quite difficult as I was kind of just starting my broadcasting career, whatever. But the bit where Postecoglou is rude to the reporter, it really annoys me because the power dynamic in that scenario is so difficult. Because if Postecoglou spoke to me like that in a pub, I would tell him to go f himself. Sorry, Tim. But you obviously can't do that because you're representing your company and there's a lot on the line for you. And you just need to be like, okay, sorry. And I just think they know that. And there was no reason to... I hate the way they do it. But then to do it and go on to say, I always win in my second year. I mean, look, Celtic, Yokohama Marinos, Melbourne Victory, and Brisbane Roar. Those are the clubs where Ange Postecoglou has had a second season in charge. And Dunny, not that I don't respect your tactical acumen, but if you were in charge of any of those teams, I would expect you to win at least one trophy in your second year, right? If I
Well,
was in
specific to
charge,
Celtic, yeah.
if I was in
Specific to
charge of
Celtic
fucking
for sure.
Celtic,
Yeah.
I could win the league with Celtic, right? I mean, with the resource, the crappiest boss in the world, the worst case scenario is second, right? So it opens itself up to that for me. And Postecoglou right now, they've said through unofficial channels, there is no conversation about his future, which there shouldn't be. I get that.
No.
But there should be a conversation about what he's doing there. It's not a sacking conversation. It's everyone looks so beaten against Arsenal at home. And maybe it's because they build it up to be their cup final too much. Maybe it's because it's been so long since they won. Maybe it's the fact they keep losing in the same way. I think it's 3 home defeats against Arsenal in a row. I don't know what it is, but with the moment Gabriel scored, everyone may as well have gone home because it felt over. And Postecoglou has to take some responsibility for that.
Well, this is where, so when Ange Postecoglou came in, I liked him. I liked him a lot. I thought he was a breath of fresh air. I liked his personality. He was front facing. I thought, obviously the Australian accent is a little bit different, right? It's a sexier accent in not so many ways. I thought the way he kind of like verbalized things, I thought he took on maybe some of the morality chances or challenges that are around football at times. And I liked it. And then when spring hit, what I didn't start liking was this it changed, right? He was obviously frustrated. The results and the success wasn't coming as quickly as maybe he thought his cult of influence could be. But then it was like, oh, I know what's right, mate. Don't question my integrity. Like those type of things. And that, oh, I know what the problem is, mate. I'm not going to say it here, but I know what the problem. And so it's like, okay, well, you keep doing this and you never told us what the problem was. So we kind of all go away. We all forget about it. We go through the transfer window. A couple of guys get pushed out, which we expected anyways. I'm not sure if they were part of the problem. I'm not sure if they were part of the personality that he didn't want inside of his locker room. But here we are, a couple of games in the season, and it's almost as if that little bite, it wasn't even a little bite, that massive bite he was taking out of the press. It's almost like now the little bite is back, and he's shooting his shot, which is up to him. He can do whatever he wants. But it's a how do I say this correctly? It's not a dangerous game to play. It's the choice to go about this route so early in the season, especially with the way that I think we saw the press conference with Eric Ten Hag a couple of weeks ago being challenged back. I think I think we're in this like precipice of like people for clout and the media members for clout are going to start going back at managers. I really do. I was talking to my boys about this because they asked me about the Eric Ten Hag conversation, and when the guy from the publication kind of popped back at him, said a bunch of truths and said some bullshit in the midst of it. Sorry, Tim, but it was thought provoking. It was provoking enough to get the conversation going. I think we could be on the start of more and more of that happening in moments like, you gonna let me answer the question, like that type of thing. Like, hold on a second. Like, don't be rude. Like, I guarantee you, specific to a female reporter, there's going to be people that be like, hold on, dude, you're out of line. You're out of sorts. Like, you don't get to talk back like this. Like, I know we're asking you questions. I know you don't want to be here. Don't be a about it. Sorry, Tim. Sorry, Tim. You know what I mean?
Sorry, Tim. It's so many. You had too many now. Last week, you gave him like 400 to beep out. And we were 15 minutes in. So few. And then boom. Coming at you. Sorry, Tim. Just one final Spurs bit. After picking up 26 points from their first 10 Premier League games under Postecoglou, it's just 44 in their last 32 fixtures. So something to think about. It's not Celtic, I'll tell you that. With Arsenal City this weekend on Sunday, I mean, has anything you've seen given you any hope's not the right word, we don't care, but, any belief maybe that Arsenal can beat City? Because as I said to you in April, I stick with it now, if you're going to be champions against this Man City, you've got to beat them twice and get 95 points. So for me, even though it's hyperbolic and dramatic and you can call me an idiot and whatnot, if they don't beat City at the weekend, they ain't going to be champions because that's the bar City have set. Can they do it?
I think they absolutely can do it. It's obviously going to be challenging. I actually don't think this is the game that determines if they're champions. I think it's against everybody else. It's the slip ups. Both of these teams are going to slip up. There's going to be 2 or 3 losses. There's going to be 5 to 7 draws. And somewhere in that average, that law of averages, one team's going to be better than the other. So yeah, I think what it's going to tell us, I think the challenge at the Etihad for Arsenal is the continued evolution of this group to showcase what they're capable of doing. Because on their day, they can absolutely beat City. On their day, they could destroy City. On City's day, they could absolutely destroy Arsenal. And the expectation is for them at home to walk away with the full 3 points. So I think if you could catch a very honest and transparent Mikel Arteta in the moment and say, point at City, do you take it? Absolutely. Based on the performance. But I think this stage, there's we made fun of him when we were watching Amazon All or Nothing, the Arsenal stuff, the motivational stuff, the caricatures and the drawings and the clocks and the light bulbs and all those things. But when it's all said and done, he's cultivating a culture and he's trying to, I think, individualize the collective that is Arsenal compared to all the other noise and all the social media and everything that the players are dealing with, trying to make this like, no, this is us. Everything around this doesn't matter. And so I think this is the evolution of the challenge when we talk about because I think it's fair to acknowledge that if Manchester City and Pep Guardiola aren't married right now at this moment, Arsenal's probably back-to-back Premier League champion.
Yeah.
But because this is what it is, we're continuing to say to ourselves, is this the game where Arsenal shows us that they're able to finally jump the shark and beat Man City when it's all said and done to lift the Premier League trophy?
Before we move on, bit of housekeeping. Thank you to all of our new listeners who have been giving us really great reviews, actually, across the board. We're 4.5, 4.9. We're nearly 5 stars on Apple. Absolutely fantastic. Keep the reviews coming in. Hello to our new listeners in New Zealand. We were in the top 20 in New Zealand for Soccer Podcast this week. So great to be with you in New Zealand. Malaysia. We were still in the top 10 last I looked, so great to be there. Top 60 in the USA. We had some new listeners in Pakistan, all over the place. So great to have new listeners. And that is down to you, the current listeners, telling your friends, telling your family to listen to Week in the Tackle. So if you like the show, tell a friend, tell a family member. The challenge really is to tell several of them. Tell the group chat. Stick it in the WhatsApp group chat. I've got a great podcast for you. It's called Week in the Tackle. There's this brilliant guy called Tom Rennie and some other bloke called Brian Dunseth. You'd have seen him on TV, sure. But Dunny keeps him keeps saying things, and Rennie keeps him in line, whatever. So look, make sure you're leaving us a good review, and just I'll read a couple of this week. So you can't write a review everywhere, but I did like this one from Michael in Ohio, who said, "This show makes my week. I love this show. Tom and Dunny have chemistry, which is off the charts. Please keep the show going. I look forward to it every week." Michael in Ohio, we will. Thank you very much for sending that in. If you can write a review, write one for us. If you can't, make sure you give us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. And just a reminder, if you're listening as a podcast, you can watch the program in its entirety on YouTube. Subscribe there, tell a friend, go to someone's house party, log into their YouTube and subscribe on our behalf. We got like 100 new subscribers this week, so I assume that worked. So I'm going with it because I love the idea of someone just signing up their nan who's never going to watch, but we count the number. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get to Liverpool against Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest won 1-0 at the weekend at Anfield. Their first win there since 1969, I think it was. Callum Hudson-Odoi scores the goal he tries like every single game his entire career, but Liverpool seemingly hadn't scouted it. Before we do the Forest of it, because I want to give my view on that, because I thought they were fantastic, and I was so impressed by them all over, including a man-of-the-match performance from James Ward-Prowse. What does this mean for Liverpool? You know, we go into the game, Arne Slot, king of the boards, it's all worked out so well, and they just couldn't get it going in this game, Danny.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because I think it was Keith Costigan that said it, that I heard something to the effect is, as a Liverpool fan, I expect them to win every single game. And specific to playing Nottingham Forest at home, that absolutely aligns with expectations. But I think what it does is continue to show that even though it doesn't pass the eyeball test, it doesn't match the visual marker of what you want to see in this new age 2024, possession with purpose type of football that we all expect. That there's something to be said about just the good old throwback of being stout defensively, keeping the game in front of you, manage the game for moments, needing a little bit of luck, a little ingenuity, and set pieces and tactics and some fresh legs, and having a gritty mentality. Um, the funny thing is I don't think either performance is out of character for either team,
Hmm.
because I think if you play this game another 9 times, Liverpool wins this game, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of that theory of 9 out of 10 times you're going to win this game. But that time you don't win, what went wrong? Well, this is one of the games that went wrong. And at the end of the day, we can talk about players, we can talk about moments, we can talk about, all of these things. Arne Slot, I think, for me in these first couple of games, has made it very clear the guys that he likes, the system that he likes. You get a pretty good indication of like substitution patterns and all of this. I think it might be safe to say, or at least point out, that maybe he ran this group one too many times. Maybe if Harvey Elliott doesn't get injured, he gets the start. Maybe if it's not an international window, maybe it's not as difficult, this type of game. But because it's an international window, guys are returning. At the end of the day, there's going to be mental fatigue. There's going to be some type of physical fatigue. The level of expectation, the performance that was expected, just wasn't there. So again, credit to Forrest, a massive 3 points early in the season, something that for Nuno will be all about confidence. And for Arne Slot, I don't think it dictates really success versus failure, but it's the first, it's the first bullet that he's taken of expectations maybe being a little bit more of reality, that we're going to see highs, but maybe we're going to see a couple blips in there as well.
Two bits on this. The second bit I wanted to get your view on, and the first is just a further bit on the way Forest played in this game, because later in the day I did Villa Everton, as I mentioned, and there was a bit in the game where it was 2-2, it was to in and fro, and it was swinging this game. It could have gone either way, and what Sean Dyche did was bring on that giant centre half O'Brien, who's like 6'8" or whatever, the Irish geezer. And they went 3 at the back, which was really like 7 at the back. And they just basically asked Villa to start attacking, which they did. They got the incredible Duran goal. But by that point, Everton had decided to bed in. They couldn't then change it up again. Whereas in this game, where they stopped Liverpool completely in the first half, a real classic, low block, stop the opposition, quell the atmosphere performance. Milenkovic was brilliant. Murillo was brilliant. Ward-Prowse, I mentioned, was brilliant. But then around the hour, Nuno does the exact opposite of Sean Dyche. And he looks at Elliot Anderson, and he looks at, I think it was Dominguez in central midfield. And Ryan Yates was in there as well in midfield. And he looks at these guys, and he's knackered about, and he's like, right, we're going to bring on Anthony Elanga, and we're going to bring on Callum Hudson-Odoi. So we're not bringing on further kind of box-to-box classic midfielders or defensive midfielders or to shut this down, another centre-half. We're going to try and win the game. We're going to get forward. We're going to go wide. We're going to look for breaks. We're going to try and make the Hudson-Odoi goal happen, which does. And there was a bravery to that, which it might not pay off, right? It might not pay off, as you mentioned. In the 99 other times they'll go to Anfield, they've not won there since 1969. I don't know how many times they've tried to do this, but I just really enjoyed it, because I just liked it, Dunny, because they played with like guts and they played with a desire to win it. They played with a bon vivre that just, maybe later in the season when you're desperate for a 0-0 draw, they couldn't do. And so I love that. But the point I wanted to put to you was the transfer business. Because, of course, Forest were your little pet project. Was it last season when they were doing the mad transfer stuff and you knew a few people that were there?
Two seasons ago. Yeah.
Was it 2 seasons ago? God, time just really goes, doesn't it? There was a bit about the business. Now, Zach Lowy, friend of ours from SiriusXM FC, put this on Twitter, and I was just doing a bit more research on it. Brennan Johnson, who was crap for Tottenham this weekend, was 55 million euro. It's in euros. I'm not doing the transfer. Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga were a combined 21 million euro. So that's near 30 million euro profit. Milenkovic came in for like 12 million pounds from Fiorentina. He is as good as Max Kilman, who's gone to West Ham for 40 million, right? He was brilliant in this game. He's still young, great experience, a steal. Suddenly, Dunny, even though they've still got Marianakis in the tunnel, he was in the tunnel before the game last week and making sure everyone knows he's there. They're suddenly doing good business, clever business. And it's sort of like they stepped away from whatever nonsense Chelsea are doing and have found a way to make it make sense. And with that, they've built a better team.
So obviously, my relationship because of Dame Murphy had me heavily swayed to Nottingham Forest over the promotion year, which was heavily built on loan options, to coming back into the Premier League, which was an complete turnover for the entire team for Steve Cooper and company. But at the time, Marinakis' son had a big influence. There was 3 or 4 other people that had influence within that group in terms of incoming signings. And Marinakis, he threw a crazy amount of money at this group. I think it was maybe last week on Counterattack, I had Marcos, our producer, pull up the numbers since promotion from Nottingham Forest, and then compare and contrast the players signed with since Bowley took over at Chelsea. And I believe it was somewhere either 43 or 45 players for Nottingham Forest versus 48 players and counting for Todd Bowley, Clear Lake, Iqbali takeover for Bluecoat.
Right.
So as much, sorry, Tim, is that we give Chelsea, like, because nobody really cares. No disrespect about Nottingham Forest, not nowhere near like the top 6 caring, even though Nottingham Forest historically massive club.
Neutrals and foreign, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
You're fine to say that. Forest fans would accept that. Don't ask.
Yeah.
They know
Yeah.
they know the score.
No disrespect, but
Yeah.
but yeah, it's that's how close it's been, the amount of players. And obviously with Matt Turner coming in, and then Marinakis' influence of having 3 other goalkeepers come in, with Matt Turner now being at Crystal Palace and going to back up Dean Henderson. It's crazy, the rotating doors that have happened there. So yes, they have capitalized. Yes, there's been turnover. I still don't think this was all Steve Cooper's fault. I'll still die on a sword for that one.
Yeah.
For Nuno, this is starting to feel like, and I don't want to overinflate, what this looks like right now just because they won at Anfield. But if he can turn them into what Wolves were underneath him, and again, I still think he catches way too much heat, way too much for what happened at Spurs, because that wasn't really his fault, even though they try to put it all on him. Remember, he was manager of the month, his first month in charge, and then all of a sudden things go sideways. So it shows that he's a very, very competent manager when it's all said and done.
Yeah, look, great result for Forest, and we did that section just to annoy Tim. Sorry, Tim. Before we get to heroes and villains this week, just a quick one on Inter Miami from the weekend, Dunny, because Lionel Messi is back, and of course we obsess about Lionel Messi because, I went to a petting zoo at the weekend with my kids before going to Tottenham Arsenal. Right, it's a petting zoo in deepest Essex. It's not in like London or a metropolitan area. It's an hour drive away from London. I saw 2 separate children in Inter Miami shirts. Separate children. One was like 4 and one was like 11. I mentioned to you before, our we live on a school, and one of the kids that walks past is always an Inter Miami kid. I mean, they have found a reach to an audience they simply wouldn't get. And we've done the pluses and the minuses of Lionel Messi, but in the end, that wouldn't happen without that. And I watched the extended highlights of the game the weekend, which they won against Philadelphia Union. And I did find myself, and again, this might make a few people bristle a little bit, so I apologize, but it was nice that there was a place in the football landscape in 2024 where I can watch not only Lionel Messi scoring, but also setting up Luis Suarez. Like, there was one goal that was disallowed and then scored an identical goal later in the game to make it 3. And there's just something about, I don't want MLS to be a retirement league or for us to discuss it as a retirement league. But also, they wouldn't be doing that if they were still Barcelona players, I don't think, because of the lack of movement and their age or whatever. Maybe you disagree. I'd be interested to hear that. But it was just nice to be able to see those two still kicking it. I did find myself enjoying that, and there's a
Mm.
place for that.
Yeah, listen, I'm not going to be the arbitrator of anybody's decisions or trying to convince anybody about the quality of the league. I will die on the hill of I don't think this league gets enough credit for the continued evolution of not only the growth and the infrastructure, but the style of play on the field, the speed of play, the technical ability, the investment into incredibly young and dynamic players that are absolutely difference makers, while still developing domestic players is extraordinary. And I think the level is continuing to impress enough that now you are seeing multiple CONMEBOL teams and you're seeing multiple European teams calling in players that are playing in Major League Soccer and that are playing big roles for their national teams during World Cup qualifying and or Nations League qualifying. So that's just me. Now, if you can, and this is typical for people, if you can just stop what you're doing, take away whatever feelings, predetermined feelings you have about Major League Soccer, and turn on a game and watch Inter Miami play. Jordi Alba flying up and down that left-hand side. Sergio Busquets triangle passing the out of people. Sorry, Tim. Messi, Messi's still Messi. He's walking a lot, but his explosiveness, his speed, his agility, he's pulling away from people still. People say it's outrageous. And Luis Suarez's his knees, nowhere near where they were, obviously. But the way he carves out space, his movement, his intelligence, and pure and simple, the finishing capabilities in the final third from those two players in link-up play, Jordi Alba getting in the final third, cutting balls back and finding runs and movement, the instinctual play from those guys, it's extraordinary, man. It really is. So, yes, this league is still going to be a league that brings in brand names. Olivier Giroud going to LAFC, Marco Reus going to LA Galaxy, those type of examples. But at the same time, there are incredibly talented young dynamic players that are not only developing in Major League Soccer, but are coming in as well. So the way I'm looking at it, this is me, and this isn't, and I know that I call the games and I'm employed by MLS and Apple by being a broadcaster, but I can break it down in the most simplest forms for me. Getting to watch these players, getting to see this game up close, I don't think it gets the credit it deserves. And
Yeah.
the biggest challenge when it's all said and done is that, and MLS knows this, they can't compete for Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, right? As we're recording right now, we're about to watch Champions League kick off for the first time this season in the new format. MLS knows they can't participate in that tournament. And that's going to be part of the evolutionary growth that is going to be an issue for them, because obviously if players want to turn on their phones and watch the game, that's going to be the spectacle that they want to be a part of. But that doesn't mean that this league can't continue to grow in a way that I've been a part of it since year two. What it was then versus what it was now, light years away. We are in astronomical spending, both on the field and off the field. And hopefully, sometime in the near future, MLS will find a way to, I don't know, maybe get their due. Because it's opportunities like this and the eyeballs right now that are on this game, I think are important to take advantage of. Lionel Messi, Suarez, Alba, Busquets being a part of this league right now.
As soon as Columbus Crew win that World Club Cup, everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's it. When they beat Man City 3-0 in the final, when they play them
the
off
best
the park.
representatives. They're the best representatives for.
They're not definitely qualified though, right? There's still
no,
they
they're
are
qualified.
definitely.
They won League Squad. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, is there one
By the way,
space left in World Club Cup? There's one left?
I think there is, but there's different formats. An MLS Cup champion, and you've got US Open Cup champion, CONCACAF Champions Cup as well will qualify.
And one of them's going to get in, but we don't know who that is.
Champions
That's
Cup.
it.
Yep.
That's it.
By the way, you've been paying attention to Aiden Morris? I'm going to die on this hill for you. You've been watching Middlesbrough? You gonna watch
I
any more?
do know the Borough fans love him, and I do know they sing American Boy to him, but I didn't watch this weekend. I don't know how he
Okay.
got on this weekend since we
I
last
think you're gonna
spoke.
love him. I
I've
think
got
you
to.
love him.
It's ready to be watched, but
Yeah.
instead I was watching the highlights of Inter Miami. So I can only watch so much. Okay. Plus I was getting drunk with one of Ray Hudson's former partners. What do you want from me, blood? Anyway, look, let's get to some heroes and villains of the last few days. Give me a hero of the last few days from the world of football, Danny. What you got for me?
Oh, a hero. I'm gonna go with Matthias de Ligt. I'm gonna be a homer for Manchester United right now because I don't think that he gets the credit that is truly due. Because when he left Ajax, I think everybody thought the evolution of him going to Juve was going to end up with him being one of the best center backs in the world. That he would be on the platform of the likes of a Virgil van Dijk. And obviously, financially, there were some issues and managerial issues at Juve. And going to Bayern Munich is still a massive club.
Mm.
Um, and I think he was fantastic at Bayern Munich. I thought last year, barring injury, he was the most consistent center back that they had underneath Thomas Tuchel. Um, but when I first started seeing the rumors that he was going to be coming with Mazraoui and joining Eric Ten Hag again, I was incredibly excited. And I know he picked up that knock, and I know it was a little bit slow coming into preseason, but back-to-back games, I think he's been fantastic. And coming from a center back that I get little manhood crushes on, I get little boyhood crushes on, watching the way they play. I think Matthias de Ligt has been phenomenal in the last couple of performances for Man City. So, or excuse me, for Manchester United. So I'm going to go with for him being my hero of the weekend.
For me, I'm going to pick Aston Villa in
Hmm.
general, all over in the last few months, weeks, years, but certainly this week. Firstly, I had so much fun doing Villa Everton at the weekend. Villa
You were great.
Park. Well, thank you. But Villa Park was amazing. Villa were amazing. The game was amazing. Everton contributed significantly to the quality of the match. The John Duran goal was
Oh,
just. It was, I'm thinking about goals these days, how you get people's attention. And I keep thinking of these as put your phone down goals.
hmm,
Like everyone's doom scrolling during games, and just that's the kind of thing where you not just look up, you put it down and you watch it again and again and again. It was so good. The narrative arc of John Duran, the Instagram live, the wanting to go to West Ham, and Chelsea put money in as well, and they couldn't find the right agreement. Duran wanted to go. He's a tricky character by all accounts, and he scored 3 winners in 4 games, 2 of them beauties, the
hmm,
Leicester header and this one outstanding. You then have Gary Shaw passing away this week, one of the legends of the European Cup win, a really beloved figure amongst villains and the game of that era as well. There was some great tributes to him in the last few days. And then we had a chat to our friend Gabi Agbonlahor, who's on, as he's coined it, Gabi Agbonlahor Tour out in Switzerland doing some talk sport bits. And we had a chat to him on Sirius a couple of days ago. And he was just talking about the fact, they went from Jack Grealish scoring an equaliser against West Ham during COVID football to stay in the league.
hmm,
They had a real tough financial time when they went down. It's only 5 years ago, 4 years ago, to have to suffer through a Steven Gerrard coach team, fate worse than death, to get to this point where they're brilliant to watch.
ugh,
They're in the actual Champions League. Never been in this competition before. They were, of course, in the European Cup in 1983. And then there was, him just talking about being in Switzerland, bumping into Villa fans. Of course, it chimes with me because of the recent West Ham European experience that I didn't think we'd ever have. And it just, I talk about it all the time because it was just so unexpectedly brilliant. And then I saw a video of Ian Taylor, who was a midfielder for Villa in the 90s, who's a bit of an ambassador for the club now. I think it might be an official role. And he was in a pub in Bern, filming himself with Villa fans all around him, singing the Villa songs the night before the young boys game. All of that, just crest of a wave stuff right now for Villa. And it shouldn't always be Chelsea and Man United and whatnot. It should
hmm.
be Newcastle. It should be West Ham. It should be Fulham. It should be Villa. It should be everyone. And so, yeah, for me, just the whole Villa thing right now is hero of the week. Give us a villain.
You just brought it up. You said it should be West Ham, not with the way they're fucking playing, Rennie. Sorry, Tim. Um, hey, I don't know if you know this. I had them fourth. I had them as a Champions League qualifier Who's that idiot?
Hmm.
Who, who, who did that? Okay, Fulkrug, thanks for the calf injury. That really helps. I don't know. Maybe start Somerville. At least Wan-Bissaka's starting. Rodriguez alongside Edson Alvarez. Uh, can you sort your shit out? Sorry, Tim. Can you, Tim? Sorry, Tim. Can you
Yeah.
sort it out,
They
please?
were very
Because
bad the weekend. The moment I saw that team of Rodriguez, Alvarez, and Socek, you were just like, this is not going to work. They
what?
can't make a forward pass between them. What are you
What?
doing?
Why? Why?
I know.
I got a Giorgio mug to win over here. You're
Hmm.
really fucking this up. Sorry, Tim.
You're not going to win it, mate. You're not going to win it because
Not even close.
no one
I
else
tried
put
to be
West Ham in the
bold.
top four.
I tried
No
to
one
be
else did
bold.
that. Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I was happy for Danny Ings and his new Ricky Gervais haircut.
Daniel Ings.
Daniel Ings, Daniel William John Ings, but and Jarrod Bowen again, just showing what a class player he is. Him and Soufal just alert to the last. It was very similar to the way they won a penalty in Prague, the two of them. He's just so good, Jarrod Bowen. The celebration when they scored the goal as well. Proper captain, love him. Statue quality player, and involved in the goal. But yeah, Lopetegui needed that. Let's put it that way. And it's Chelsea coming up. And if you want to launch yourself to a fan base, beating Chelsea at home is how you do it. My villain, I watched for my eternal shame Birmingham Wrexham on Monday. It's been a big
You're a
media.
sellout. You're a
I
big
am.
sellout.
I
You're
am a
such
sellout. I am a
Such a
sellout. But it was on, and I thought, I'll watch some of this, and I had some friends working on it, so I was like, yeah, okay. And there was a Tom Brady interview because he is a non-advisory board member. I forget
I
the
bet you
title,
that was
but
really like captivating. It was really interesting, right? That
I
interview.
mean, it wasn't interesting, no, but I mean, it will sell, right? I
Yeah,
guess.
oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
You
so
can
there
really
was
feel the passion and the culture in the interview.
But there was even the bit with like Rob McElhenney flying from the Emmys to the game, and Beckham was there, and Brady's there, and all this. It's good.
Beckham's kid. Yeah.
Yeah, who gave up on football and is now a model. There was no way of knowing. But the reason I bring it up is not because they managed to make something out of Birmingham Wrexham. And look, they've made something out of it, right? They made us talk about it, and that was their aim, and they've done it. So well done to these guys on that particular score. But it was the Paul Mullin of it, the Dunsethery, and I don't know if you saw this. So Paul Mullin's come on. He's the Wrexham striker who's been with them a decent amount of time. He was at Cambridge before, bit of a journeyman before this part of his career. And he gets into a bit of a challenge with Birmingham's Alex Cochrane. They then sort of tumble onto the ground together. And Paul Mullin, 1000% thinks about biting him. Like teeth around the calf, and he is about to chomp down. Then he suddenly realizes, oh, I'm on national TV and Tom Brady is here. Let's not do that. And he just sort of like rubs the teeth over the calf and then, like you're about to flirt with the waitress before you realize you're at dinner with the wife, that sort of thing. So it was a bit of a villain. We've all
That
been
happened
there.
to you?
We've all been there. That's why she's my ex-wife now. But not really. But Mullin then went to Elon Musk's, far right website, but some of us are still on it. And he said, quote, I know what it looks like, but it didn't happen. Although you can tell his leg was thinking about attacking my mouth, which I just thought was excellent. But he's villain of the week in a kind of villain you love to hate, Tony Soprano kind of way, anti-hero. Because I mean, it was a very Dunsethery move. You ever bitten someone?
As soon as I saw it, no, I haven't. Maybe playing with my kids, like messing around, like by that whole thing. But no, but that you
you're
can
a
see.
pincher. You're a little pincher.
Oh yeah, no, I'm more of a thumber. A thumb
Thumber.
the rips, thumb the rips. I mean, you can move them around. It's great. I teach the boys like just put it right in the back of the kidneys, move them around, all that fun stuff.
Sickens me when you say that. Sickens me. Anyway, so he's my villain. Do we do a? They can all get awards. Why do we try and pick one? I don't know. It's just a feature. Anyway, we're out of time on today's program. Brian Dunny Dunseth, thank you very much indeed. I've been Tom Rennie. Tim Horsey produced the program, and we've been apologizing to him profusely. Remember, give us a 5-star review. Write us a good review. And if you're listening to the podcast, you can watch the show on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, listen as a podcast, subscribe everywhere. We'll see you next time.